and that all students and faculty will continue with remote learning. Private schools with longer academic years will remain closed until at least June 30. We reached this decision after much consideration with Commissioner Repillette in the Department of Education, district officials across the state, and multiple stakeholders, including both educators and parents. We reached this conclusion based on the guidance from our public health experts and with a single goal in mind: the safety and well-being of our children and of our educators, administrators, and staff. This has been an inclusive and rigorous process involving people with a wide range of experiences and perspectives, and because of this process, we've been able to reach this conclusion 11 days in advance of the deadline I had previously set. We wanted you to know when we did and to provide certainty. I had hoped that we could get back to a sense of normal by allowing our children to return to the schools they love and to be with their friends and classmates. But the reality is that we cannot safely reopen our schools to provide students and families or faculty and staff the confidence needed to allow for a return to in-person instruction. As such, the executive order I signed on March 16th, which closed our schools indefinitely, remains in effect. As I have noted before, we are working with the principle that public health creates economic health, or in this case, public health creates educational health. If the standards to reopen our workplaces are high, they are even higher when it comes to schools filled with our most precious assets, our children. We simply could not find a way to reconcile that core principle and open our school buildings at this time. The hurdles, logistical, educational, and most of all practical, that would have allowed students and faculty to return, even for a short while, could not be overcome. We could not guarantee an environment that would not only be safe, but fully capable of meeting the educational needs of students in a setting built for social distancing. So we are directing all district, charter, Renaissance, county, VOTEC, private, and other school leaders to update their preparedness plans to ensure the continuation of remote learning. As the father of a high schooler who has been attending classes remotely for nearly 2 months, with his siblings, by the way, 3 of them in college doing the same, I understand the concerns of both parents and school leaders. I understand those concerns, even if I always don't understand the assignments. I think a lot of us are in that boat. And I also fully appreciate the disappointment that our kids won't be closing the school year among their friends. But for us to ensure that we can undertake a responsible restart and recovery, this step was necessary. I must note that this decision only applies to the remainder of the 2019-2020 regular academic year. The department will be leading stakeholder meetings alongside district leaders, educators, local officials, and parent organizations to determine whether summer educational or enrichment or other programs offered at our schools may proceed. And when we make a final determination on those programs, we will certainly announce it. Additionally, the department will be conducting the same rigorous work and stakeholder engagement regarding the opening of our buildings for the 2020-2021 school year in September. There is a lot to consider about how the school day may differ once our students and faculty return. Throughout all of these issues, we are keenly focused on issues of equity. Where sports are concerned, we are leaning on the guidance from the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association against the resumption of spring sports for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year as well. The NJSIAA Medical Board has concluded that due to a lack of testing, viable treatments, and a vaccine, that spring sports were not a viable option. I know the NJSIAA took no pleasure in reaching that conclusion, and frankly, neither do I in stating it. And this decision, I know, goes beyond just considerations of safety given COVID-19, but also to the overall physical health and safety of our student athletes. I also know that our graduating seniors were looking forward to their proms and walking across the stage to receive their diplomas in front of their families and friends. I still want to see them have those opportunities, and we will also work with districts on safe and creative ways to give the class of 2020 a proper send-off to their bright futures. I want to thank every parent, grandparent, or guardian who has been juggling everything else in their life on top of being their child's at-home educator. I know it hasn't been easy, but I also know that you have been extraordinary. And I thank our educators, staff, and administrators, the best in the United States of America, who have performed heroically with little time to prepare for this uncharted path. You continually prove why New Jersey has the best public schools in the United States of America. We can also announce that the department has already applied for $310 million in federal assistance for our schools, which we are entitled to, and of which at least roughly $280 million would flow to our schools to help them cover the costs of purchasing educational technology, cleaning and sanitizing their buildings, and ensuring support services for students who require them, among other costs. I know Commissioner Repillette will have more to say on this. But to every student, we want you to be safe. We want you to be healthy. We want you to continue your educational journey wherever it takes you. And to ensure all of these things, we have to take this step. Additionally, today I am signing an executive order that lays bare the severity of the financial crisis we face because of COVID-19, from both plummeting state revenues due to the near total shutdown of our economy and the skyrocketing costs of fighting this pandemic. I am rescinding the executive order I signed on June 30th, 2019, which directed State Treasurer Liz Moya to achieve a $1.276 billion surplus by the end of this current fiscal year. Absent significant outside assistance, this is no longer feasible. No administration, and I mean no one, has been as committed to restoring our state's fiscal foundation than ours. We have spent the past 2+ years working nonstop to build surpluses and put money aside for a rainy day. We've reduced reliance on one-shots to historic lows and have made unprecedented pension contributions while working in partnership with our public workers to reduce health care costs for 2 consecutive years. At the same time, we've made significant new investments in our schools, in direct property tax relief, in mass transit, and in any number of vital programs that serve millions of New Jerseyans each and every day. But right now, it's pouring. We are on the brink of having to make very tough and, quite frankly, very unpalatable decisions regarding each of these areas and more. And we need to have these funds as a safeguard should direct federal assistance to our state fail to surface. And today, I will also be vetoing numerous bills the legislature sent to my desk to appropriate money to any number of causes and programs. I don't want to veto them, but given our current fiscal situation, I have no other choice. These discussions aren't just happening here in New Jersey either. They're happening across the nation. We need the federal government to step forward with significant investment in our states, both red and blue, to prevent our recovery from being held back because we cannot fund it. Every governor shut his or her state's economy to combat COVID-19. We all will feel the devastating impact of this necessary but costly action. Across the country, cuts to critical services are inevitable, and bankruptcy is not an option. This is not about legacy fiscal issues either. We will continue our efforts to right our financial house as we have been doing. Nor is this a bailout. This is about keeping our police and firefighters, our EMTs and paramedics, and our public health workers, our educators, and the hardworking folks processing a mountain of unemployment claims, among so many others, on the job and working to get us through this. A fiscal disaster is not months away. These decisions will be on our doorstep in literally just a few weeks. Congress needs to act, and act now. I will continue to work as I have with anyone from either side of the aisle and at every level to get this done for the people of New Jersey. But even if Congress delivers, it won't be enough. We will still need to borrow on a short-term basis to bridge our immediate cash flow needs. For weeks, I have been working collaboratively with the legislature to provide our administration this authority, and I ask them today, and I ask you to ask them today to pass this legislation swiftly so our frontline responders can breathe a little easier. Even Warren Buffett said this weekend, this is a good time to borrow money. Let's get this done. Now let's look at the overall overnight numbers. And by the way, I believe right up front these numbers are suspect, and I wish I could say they weren't, Judy, but I believe they are. We're announcing an additional 1,621 positive test results for a statewide total of 128,269. Again, the number of new cases may be low as a result of a network outage that we had yesterday that may have prevented all cases from being processed. I hope history will prove me wrong on this, but I believe that is the case. This may also be true, sadly, for the reporting of new deaths, as we will see in a minute. Here is the graph which shows new case numbers, and even with today's likely incomplete count, we see where we still need to push down the curve. The map, which we show you regularly, of New Jersey, we have turned to, as they say most days, continues to get lighter and lighter as the rate of doubling of new cases continues to slow. Again, we've only got one county left in the orange. And again, those numbers in the south are a lot smaller than the ones in the north. But the progress in both north, central, and south is unmistakable. We will be carefully reviewing these charts and maps over the coming days to see if the reopening of our parks was successful. But I want to thank the overwhelming number of you who did the right thing and took all of our asks and precautions to heart. I know many of our parks filled up early in the day, and I don't blame you one bit for wanting to get out. My wife and I went for a run yesterday. I want to give Monmouth County a shout out in Thompson Park in Middletown. They had the place set up exactly as the doctor ordered. Folks did not congregate. It was generally a very, very positive experience. The only exception, and I want to hit this point again hard, not enough masks. I'd say probably 80 or 90% of the folks were not wearing masks. That's something that we have to continue to pound upon. But again, the county had set it up, and we heard stories like this up and down the state. Pat can give you, and will give you, the compliance report. More importantly, we heard very few incidents of knucklehead behavior that would require me to reverse course and close them again. So to all of you, thank you for helping us pass this important test. And again, Pat will give a better sense of compliance in a few minutes. As of last night's reporting, 5,287 patients with COVID-19 were being treated in our hospitals. This is a drop, by the way, of about 1,000 in just 5 days. And let's look at the regions. Across every region of the state, we continue to see the overall stresses lessening in our healthcare system. Again, even in the South, which is seeing some flattening, the numbers on the chart will show you that the overall numbers are lower than they are in the central and the northern part, but even now that curve is beginning to flatten. Our field medical stations reported 41 patients. There were 1,610 patients in either critical or intensive care, and this number too has decreased every day for the past 6 days. Ventilator use currently stands at 1,189, the lowest it's been, Judy, I think in over a month. There were 362 new hospitalizations yesterday, and on discharges, 335 live patients were released from our hospitals yesterday. Our hospitals continue to show the positive trends we want and need to see if we are to get ourselves in a steady position to get on the road back and toward the responsible restart of our economy. These numbers are beginning to become the underpinnings of our overarching ideals that public health creates economic health and that data determines dates. Unfortunately, even with these positive trends we are seeing, we continue to lose too many residents to COVID-19. And with the heaviest of hearts, we report 45 additional deaths from among our New Jersey family. Again, however, this number is likely lower as a result of the network outage we had yesterday. But either way, there are 45 precious lives. Our statewide total is 7,910. COVID-19 doesn't care who it takes. Our losses mirror our diversity. And today we remember 3 more who have been taken from our New Jersey family. This is Michael Connors Sr. He had 3 loves: family, cars, and work. At first, his love of cars led to a career as an auto mechanic in Newark. But while there, he made numerous friends within the Newark Police Department, and with their encouragement, he ultimately joined their ranks in 1993. He proudly served the people of Newark as a police officer for 26 years. COVID-19 claimed him just this past Thursday, and Michael was only 58. His family says he'll be forever remembered for his work ethic, dedication, wit, and fun-loving presence. Michael leaves his daughter Dorothy, with whom I had the honor of speaking yesterday afternoon, 2 sons, Michael Jr. and Damien, his adopted daughter Samia, as well as 7 grandchildren and a committed companion, Tiffany Parham, and many other relatives and friends. On behalf of our state, we thank him for his selfless service, and we keep the whole Connors family and his memory in our prayers. Luis Fernando Maharlanda. There he is. He came to the United States from Colombia in Medellin when he was 22 years old. He lived in Secaucus and was a long-time employee of NJ Transit and New York Waterway before that, taking pride in his work and in helping get people to where they needed to go. And he was one of those who helped pilot the ferries that shuttled residents back home across the Hudson River on 9/11. Throughout this current emergency, he continued serving his passengers as a bus operator for NJ Transit right until COVID-19 took him too. He was planning to retire literally next year, and he turned 63 just 2 weeks ago. He will be remembered by his family, friends, and coworkers for his smile, his laugh, and his willingness to always lend a hand or help others. He is survived by 2 children, one of whom is his daughter, who is serving in the United States military as we speak, 2 brothers, 3 sisters, nieces and nephews. I had the great honor to speak to one of his nieces, Kathleen Bedoya from Montclair yesterday, and we reviewed Luis's extraordinary life. And he leaves behind a transit family that will not ever forget his dedication to service. And finally, we remember George Anthony Caius of Ridgefield in Bergen County. He was known affectionately as Georgie and was only 27 years old when he passed on Friday. Georgie had Down syndrome, and while he could not communicate verbally, he would always show his love by showering the people he knew with hugs and kisses. He loved music and took special joy in watching his sister's dance recitals, where he would get lost in the music. He also loved to eat, and his mom said the best Christmas present she could give him would be a rump roast. My kind of guy. He loved Sesame Street's Elmo and Disney's Mickey Mouse too, as you can see. And he even had the chance to meet the Mick. He brought joy to his family and everyone he touched. Georgie is survived by his parents, Anna. I spoke with his mom yesterday, and that was as tough as it gets, as you can imagine. His dad, Bernardo, his sister, Alexandra, both of his grandmothers, and many more aunts, uncles, and cousins. And by the way, beyond the tragedy of Georgie's passing, which is unspeakable, there's been a lot of challenges in that household, including one of his grandmothers having a stroke on Valentine's Day. So they've been dealing not only with the awfulness of COVID-19 and losing Georgie, but also other health care challenges. He was a special, by every measure, and bright spirit, and he was taken from us all too soon. May God bless the memory of that guy, and may his memory bless all of us. These are the faces, some of the faces, that COVID-19 has taken. They are among the thousands of names that we will remember. And they are the people for whom we will continue our work to defeat this virus. It's why we will keep up with our social distancing even when we begin the process of restart and recovery. This weekend, we saw that so many of you understand how this works. And we thank you for keeping your distances, and please, your face coverings. We need to see more of them, by the way, even when you didn't want to do either of those. But there are others who went to our parks or headed into downtown streets who need to be reminded why we should be wearing face coverings and staying away from each other, and for whom we need to be role models. Social distancing right now is the only proven COVID-19 prevention. I would add face masks to that. There are no recognized treatments yet, and there is no cure. There's no vaccine yet. There is only social distancing, and a face covering is about you, if you are asymptomatic, lowering your chances of spreading the virus to others. That covering blocks you from potentially sending infected droplets into the air to impact others, including potentially your loved ones. So again, thank you for what was overall a very positive weekend. Now let's step it up, let's keep it up, and together we will win this. This morning, I want to say that we had the first meeting of our Reopening and Recovery Commission, and it was Judy and I were on it along with others of our team. I thought it was an excellent discussion. It's an extraordinary group of people. And on that call, chaired by the way, President Emeritus of Princeton University, Shirley Tillman, and CEO of Merck & Co., Ken Frazier. On that call, we announced, and we'll give more color on this as we go forward, that we'll be forming other councils to advise us much closer to the ground, much more in-state. We've heard from a lot of you that they respect enormously the talent that we have collected from all perspectives and both sides of the aisle in this Recovery and Reopening Commission. But we also need tactical, very close to the ground help, and we'll be forming councils in that respect as well. Finally, I want to give a couple of well-deserved shout-outs to some folks around the state who have similarly stepped up during this emergency. First, I want to give a huge thanks to the Palestinian American Community Center in Clifton, which has been working throughout this emergency to support its entire community. The PAC, as it's known, has always been an active organization, and they've kicked into overdrive, delivering 400 meals Monday to Friday to families in their area and distributing 400 food baskets to hospitals and senior citizen centers and to police, firefighters, and EMTs. The PAC has distributed as well 15,000 masks, 50,000 pairs of gloves, 1,200 cans of disinfectant spray, and 1,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. And it's been holding regular webinars to keep the community informed about COVID-19 and how we can defeat it. Our state's greatest strength is our tremendous diversity. We are truly one big family pulling together. So to everyone at the PAC, New Jersey, thanks you. And finally, we want to give a shout out to Collingswood's Patrick Rodeo, who yesterday ran 20.20 miles to raise money to pay for high school yearbooks for students who cannot afford them on their own. From his run through Knight Park yesterday, he raised more than $3,000. Given today's announcement about schools and this school year, this act takes on greater meaning. For some students in Collingswood, the yearbook will be their bank of memories of a school year that was unlike any other. Because of Patrick, they'll now be able to hold those memories. So to you, Pat, Collingswood, and New Jersey, we thank you. And with that, I will turn things over to the woman who needs no introduction. Please help me welcome the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persichilli.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon. I'm really pleased today to remind everyone that this week is National Nurses Week. It's time to pay tribute. Time to pay tribute to and thank New Jersey's 170,000 nurses for the work that they do every day to protect and save lives. They are caring for COVID-19 patients in our hospitals, our critical care units, our field medical stations, and our alternative care sites. They are assisting the residents of our state psychiatric hospitals, our nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. They are working at our testing sites, and they are helping our local health departments. The work they've been performing has been challenging, to say the least. As a nurse, I do know that it's one of the hardest jobs, and their bravery and services during this time has demonstrated that there is nothing that will hold them back from saving lives in New Jersey. They run into the fire, not away from it. This year's theme of National Nurses Week is compassion, expertise, and trust. People just trust nurses. They are a part of the heart and soul of our healthcare system. So when you see a nurse, do me a favor, do them a favor, and say thank you. Thank you to them for all the work that they do. Last evening, our hospitals reported 5,287 hospitalizations of COVID-19 individuals. This number, as the governor has reported, is on a steady decline. There are 1,610 individuals in critical care. 74% of those patients are on ventilators, significantly down from that high of 97% 2 weeks ago. 2 hospitals in the central region were on divert status last evening. No hospitals in the south or the north. 395 individuals have been treated in our field medical stations, and our hotel in Secaucus is currently reporting 64 guests. 19 healthcare workers and 45 patients have been discharged from those centers, and they've served a total of 100 individuals at the Secaucus Hotel. Today, we're reporting 1,621 new cases for a total of 128,269 total cases. We are reporting 45 additional deaths, as the governor reported. We did have a network outage yesterday, so we are certain that these numbers are underreported. But for the information we have right now, the breakdown of deaths by race and ethnicity is as follows: white, 52.5, Black, 19.5, Hispanic, 17.3, Asian, 5.3, and other, 5.5. There are now 508 long-term care facilities in the state reporting COVID-19 cases. At the state veterans' homes, among a census of 682 veterans, there have been 360 residents testing positive for COVID-19, and a total of 123 deaths. At our state psychiatric hospitals, with a census of 1,250, 163 patients have tested positive, and there have been 10 deaths. That is similar to what I reported last week. According to the lab data that we have tested 248,319 individuals, 99,368 tested positive, for a current positivity rate of 40.02%. So that concludes my daily report. Again, please continue to follow social distancing guidelines. It definitely is making a difference. Stay connected, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you.
Judy, thank you. And here's again to the nurses in our state. How many did you say, 175,000?
170,000.
170,000, of which you are among its ranks.
Sort of.
Bless you. And thank you for your leadership. Obviously, reporting a lot today. By the way, the top 6 counties remain in terms of positives as they have been. I don't think the overnight, we're not as confident in the overnight data, so I won't spend any time on that. Positivity, again, continues to drift down. And as Ed reminds us, that's a cumulative number. The spot number is invariably going to be lower. And again, remind everybody, we have a disproportionate amount of symptomatic folks in that. That won't always be the case. In fact, I bet you not that long from now, that will decidedly not be the case. But it is still for the moment. And so that number going down is a positive measure by any light. Obviously, a big announcement on education today. Please help me welcome a great leader in that respect and in so many, the Commissioner of the Department of Education, Dr. Lamont Repellette.
Thank you. I am also proud to announce that this week is designated Teacher Appreciation Week. So happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all the educators out there. Thank you, Governor Murphy and Commissioner Persicelli. To say that this is not an easy decision is an understatement. But as Governor Murphy reminds us, we must be guided by science and the facts on the ground. I thank you, Governor, for prioritizing the health and safety of our students, educators, and families here in New Jersey. To all of our parents whose homes have turned into classrooms, to all of our teachers who've pivoted to remote instruction overnight, to all of our school district and leaders working around the clock to ensure that students of diverse needs are being met, I am in awe of your ability to adapt and tremendously proud and impressed at how you continue to address complex challenges. We do not take your work and sacrifice for granted. Today, the announcement that New Jersey schools will be closed to students for the remainder of the year will undoubtedly raise questions and concerns. I am dedicating every resources at my disposal to answer those questions and to quickly as we can, and to ensure that we give our educators the information and flexibility needed to uplift our students during this unprecedented times. In the weeks leading up to Governor Murphy's order to close elementary schools and secondary schools, the Department of Education requires school districts to develop emergency preparedness plans that address critical areas such as delivery of remote instruction, special education services, and food security. Given the speed at which schools have transitioned to remote learning and the rapidly changing public health landscape in our state, districts have continuously revised plans in response to these changing conditions. This announcement would undoubtedly require the districts to revise those plans once again and to ensure continuity of these key services through the end of the school year. My team will continue to take a boots-on-the-ground approach to support local school districts as they rise to that challenge and take obstacles none of us could have envisioned when we set out to be educators. The department is also looking forward to the future to explore what summer instruction and the next school year may look like for New Jersey schools and students. To that end, we are creating a steering committee of diverse stakeholders to help us navigate these issues. Our guiding policy principle through this work is that each local community knows that their students best, and our job is to provide every flexibility we can to unlock district innovation and to provide for their students during these extraordinary times, while also putting guardrails in place to uphold our high quality and equitable educational system. I know, however, that this work goes beyond plans and resources. As the father of a daughter who is graduating from high school this spring, the personal impact of this decision hits home for me. To parents of graduating seniors, please know that I stand with you and commit to finding ways to honor our graduates and celebrate the incredible resilience of the class of 2020. Districts are working on a wide variety of innovative plans for alternative graduation ceremonies, proms, and other traditional end-of-the-year celebrations. My team at the Department of Education is committed to helping each district find solutions uniquely tailored to the needs and priorities of their local communities. We recognize that in our work to honor students, it is critical that we elevate their voices and let their passion and innovative thinking inform decisions that impact them most. When we get through this, and as the governor always reminds us, we will get through this, our young people are poised to inherit our post-COVID world, and we must empower them to carve the pathways that get us there. We have been working to tap the federal funding that can help provide schools with the resources they need to deliver remote instruction, deep cleaning school building, and address the emotional needs of students. To that end, the department recently applied for $310 million in federal funding through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, which is part of the CARES Act. This funding can be provided for important initiatives such as purchasing technology, purchasing supplies to clean and sanitize schools, mental health supports, activities related to summer learning, and supplemental after-school programs, which can include online learning during the summer to address the needs of subgroups of students, providing school leaders with resources to address the needs of their schools and activities to address the unique needs of subgroups of students, and coordinating the distribution of meals to eligible students. It is important to know that school districts will have a great deal of local discretion at how they use these funds to best benefit their students. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to Governor Murphy, as always, for his leadership. Unprecedented times calls for unprecedented acts of leadership and humanity. We are in totally uncharted waters, facing the kinds of decisions and challenges we never imagined, and you continue, Governor, to make those tough choices to protect New Jersey students and educators. Thank you, as always, for your resolute leadership, boss.
Lamont, thank you for yours as well, and I know this was not an easy call for you, for Judy, for me, for any of us, including at a very personal level. As you point out, you got a high school senior in your house, and I've taken an enormous amount of, and I know you have as well, we all have input and incomings from parents and educators and kids themselves, and particular sympathy and deep sympathy for the seniors. And I'd say yet again, the seniors who participate in something after school, particularly sports, it's not what any of us signed up for. And so it's with in some respects, a heavy heart, but we have no choice in this. This is not a decision that's been made based on emotions. This is based on the hard science. And so thank you for your leadership at every step of the way, Lamont. Deep appreciation. Before we throw it to questions, I'm going to ask you each to keep it to 1 or 2 each, because we're up against it a little bit, and I apologize for that. We're normally more expansive, but we're on the clock today. Pat Callahan, thank you for your leadership. Anything you got on compliance, in particular compliance today, I think is on everyone's mind. Compliance, PPE, infrastructure, other matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'll start with the weekend with regards to the parks. Certainly overwhelming compliance there. We had Chief Amanda Smith, who's the chief of police for the Park Police under DEP, was in direct contact with the Rock over the weekend. Although they hit capacity early, as the governor said, really no EO violations issued there. A few parking summonses for those folks who parked outside where they shouldn't once the parking lot was full, but really overwhelming compliance. The shore towns saw an influx of both vehicular and foot traffic. There was a few extra drawbridge openings, I know, in Seabright, which caused a little bit of traffic because the recreational boating was kind of through the roof. I also had a call yesterday morning with all police chiefs from the entire state, and again from Sussex to Cape May, just overwhelming compliance on what everybody knows were 2 gorgeous days. With regards to the EO violations, Newark issued 210 and closed 17 businesses. In Elizabeth, a homeowner was cited for having more than 10 subjects at his house for a party. In Bridgewater, a woman who was in a rehabilitation facility refused commands by the nurses to get back to the COVID floor for cohorting, and she spit on her hands and wiped medical equipment with the saliva that she had spit. In East Hanover, an employee at a gas station was cited for not wearing a mask and social distancing. In Mount Olive, a subject was cited for being at a closed basketball court. In Patterson, a subject was cited for an EO violation for not wearing a mask and not social distancing. Patterson store owner was cited for the second time for having a non-essential furniture store open. Rahway, two subjects were cited for having a large party. East Orange, two subjects cited for failure to socially distance. In Roselle, a non-essential beauty supply store owner was cited. In North Bergen, a non-essential business, a car wash was cited, vehicle detail. And in Secaucus, a subject who was initially arrested for shoplifting at a Home Depot, stated to have coronavirus and coughed on the officers involved. But again, for 2 beautiful days, overwhelming compliance, I think, as the governor said, leads us to hopefully that continues, and we are monitoring it as we move forward. And I will just close with saying God bless all our nurses. Thanks, Gov.
God bless our nurses and our teachers. I got them on both sides of me here. Pat, thank you. And again, deep appreciation to everybody out there who really did the right thing. And I saw it with my own eyes, and all of us were anecdotally. Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner Catherine McCabe, I want to give a big shout out. She and I spoke on Saturday night. We exchanged last night. Her people were out there. Pat's folks were out there. As I mentioned earlier, in my county, counties up and down the state were really doing the right thing. And most importantly, you all were doing the right thing. We got to come back to you on masks. I'm a big believer that that's something we need to be more, I'm not going to use the word forceful, but that's a game changer. And again, the faster we break the back of this sucker, the faster we'll be able to get back into business. But I will say this, the overwhelmingly good compliant behavior I mentioned on I think Thursday and Friday, and I know on Saturday, that the behavior that you all showed everybody this weekend is going to give us more degrees of freedom in terms of decisions that are not just outdoor decisions, but also other decisions down the road. Most importantly, because through that behavior, the curves continue to come down. I was criticized by someone, a legislator, for using the word knucklehead. So I looked it up for myself, and in the definition is a stupid, bumbling, inept person, which I think is with all due respect, quite consistent with some of the behavior. Martell, we're going to start over here, with some of the behavior, Pat, that you have highlighted. But I was given 2 alternatives to consider, not by that person, by the way, blockhead or numbskull. I like knucklehead because I think we started there, it's got 3 syllables, it's got a little bit more oomph. But to the legislator who raised that, that's the point. That's the point. Overwhelmingly, folks are doing the right things, but for the very small minority who are not, they need to be called out. That's why we're doing it. So hats off to everybody out there. So impressive in the compliance. Again, we're going to ask you to keep this short. John, welcome back. We're going to start with you. Hold on one second. There we go. Martell, thank you. You're going to be with our mic today.
The school's order, is it talk about colleges and universities, daycare centers, how are they fitting into this? What metrics will you be using to think about September reopening, and can you talk about how the reopening of schools is linked to the general reopening of businesses in the state in general? And on borrowing, is this the Fed bill you're talking about borrowing, or is it new market borrowing to do short-term expenses?
So the borrowing is the Fed for the time being, because the private markets are not hospitable at the moment, to say the least, even though the equity market shows sort of these bounces one day to the next. Nothing new to report on daycare, to the best of my knowledge, or higher ed. Is that correct, Matt?
Daycares will continue to operate under Executive Order 110, which has the emergency daycare system. And just on the bill itself, it authorizes both private and Fed borrowing.
And metrics, bear with us on that. Lamont mentioned, as did I, that there's going to be an enormous amount of stakeholder engagement, including what the summer might look like in terms of enrichment opportunities, et cetera. So bear with us on that. We're going to go to the back, and then we'll come down. Actually, Mike, I didn't see you there. So we'll start here, go to Mike, and then come down. Please.
Good afternoon, Governor. What would you have needed to have seen in the data in order to be confident in opening schools again? Why didn't you decide to kind of go this route ultimately? What didn't you see? Second, graduation will be allowed to continue to some degree. What creative ways have you already discussed, and what's kind of feasible at this point? And just third, how does the current financial situation impact state aid? Any update on that?
Impact what, sorry?
Impact state aid, how much schools are getting.
Yeah, so to be determined on the last question, but everything will get crushed. And I'm more worried right now about manpower. And state aid, in fact, is an indirect has an indirect impact on manpower within our education system. I'll ask either Lamont or Judy, because they were deeply involved in this. On graduation, bear with me on that. We're trying to figure out some ways, you know, everything from virtual stuff all the way toward something down the road, depending on if the virus, please God, we get this thing to go away, we could find a way to celebrate maybe in some social distancing compliant way going forward. But there's a lot of good thought being put into something on graduation, because we owe it to the seniors to give them a tip of the cap. I would just say the NJSIAA, I think, even though that was directed at sports, I think you can make that statement more broadly. You've got a balance of the school year beyond May 15th of what looks like about 5 weeks for most schools, I think, Lamont. And you've got real healthcare issues, and what we would need to prepare to make that school reality compliant with social distancing. We don't have therapeutics or a vaccine. We've got big intergenerational concerns, even though this has been very benign with kids. I think the experts to my right would suggest that there's unwitting asymptomatic passage of this that any of us have our arms around yet. And so for all of the above reasons, it felt like a bridge too far. I believe this is true, and Matt may correct me if I'm wrong here, or Mahan, who's been studying this. I believe we're state number 46 to close for the balance of the year. It was 43 on Thursday. New York does that sound right, Lamont? New York is now shut for the balance, remote only. Connecticut, I believe, is doing something similar. So we're not exactly George Washington here, but we did want to give this every shot we could, in particular for the seniors. And it just feels like a bridge too far. Anything you want to add to this, Lamont? Microphone?
I think the governor's correct. I think we need to get more information on social distancing. I think as they provide the standard or minimum guidelines that we have. So right now there has been, as the governor mentioned, there's been a variety of ideas tossed out, whether it's to have the have a graduation in August, to have virtual graduations. I think it's more of an individualized decision. However, we're going to continue to work with the Department of Health to really kind of ascertain more standards, I think, for opening schools or doing anything that has to do with social distancing.
If we think there's something fun we can do at a state level, sign us up. That's healthy and compliant. Anything you want to add on schools?
Yeah, I think we have to realize, and I get these questions as well, it doesn't seem like children are getting hit as hard, but they can still be carriers. And I think you mentioned the intergenerational homes, and we have to be concerned about safeguarding everyone. So, another 5 weeks does not seem like to do that and stretch too far when you're balancing that with the risk of more people getting contacted with COVID positive individuals. And we're looking at the epidemiology every day. We track new COVID cases, cumulative cases, hospitalizations of COVID-19 patients, hospitalizations into critical care, overall hospital availability. So we're tracking the extent of the disease every day. And although we see it coming down, we still have over 5,000 individuals in our hospitals ill enough to be hospitalized with COVID-19.
If you, and by the way, I read Jersey papers every day, so don't be offended by my citing a New York paper. And I'm probably the last person who reads it. Actually, Judy and I established we're the last two people who read a physical print version. But above the fold, New York Times today, if you haven't read it, why does COVID hit you? Where does it hit? Why does it hit? The amount of unknown and open questions, particularly in the epidemiological front, Ed, sorry to practice without a license, is long. This is among experts. And so the view that we have taken, if one other way to put it is we're going to know a lot more a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now than we know today, inevitably. Please.
Question about access to technology for education. We've heard from some families, even if they have received a computer from their district, they have multiple kids at home and they're having to share. Any plans to quickly resolve that? I understand that with the federal aid, that can pay for some of that, but how quickly do you think that might come through? And in terms of requirements to move ahead to the next grade, will any of those requirements be relaxed or adjusted because of this situation to move up?
Lamont, do you want to hit both of those? The federal money that you talked about, you and I talked about as part of the technology answer, I think, right?
Well, I'm proud to say that I guess the number of districts or students that did not have access to technology had decreased about 15,000. So districts are every day working on that, using their federal funds. They currently have Title I funds, using their general funds that they have, knowing the fact that they can get money from the CARES Act allows them now to spend money, because as the governor said, this is the rainy day. So they are preparing for that. So we're very encouraged to see that digital divide will be lessened as we move towards September. And in regards to, what was the second question was?
Requirements, any loosening or changing?
Oh, yeah, so we're currently working with districts right now to put some guidelines. I mean, and so people think and ask, why aren't we giving out directives? Because there's individual districts and there's different needs, different grading policies that they have with their own policies and regulations within their district. So what we're doing right now is just having communication and conversation with them to really kind of come up with a concrete guideline set. You know, because some districts doing pass-fail, some districts doing alphabet, some districts doing whatever their board policy states in regards to their retention, that's what they're going to follow. But we're encouraged to really work with them to provide guidelines.
Thank you. Let's go. Mike, is that you? I can't even see you there behind that mask. Go ahead.
Thanks, Governor. Good afternoon. I wonder, with summer coming up, what you can say the state will do about beaches that try to restrict their access to residents only. And with schools staying closed now, is it safe to assume that casinos will also be closed at least through June 30th, or have you made a decision about casinos at this point?
Was that implying that the correlation between whether our kids are in school or casinos? Or?
Unintentionally, if it seemed that.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to practice without a license. I said this, I believe, last week, so this is not my call. This is a legal call. I believe communities cannot restrict, or not allowed legally to restrict to just their residents. Is that correct, Matt? Yeah, that is. He's giving me the nod. But as a general matter, notwithstanding a beach decision may be a local decision, bear with us because we think some guidance may make sense here. In fact, we're certain it will make sense. We're encouraged by the compliance over the weekend with the state and county parks. That's a good thing. One of the particular striking elements in seeing it with my own eyes, and Pat referred to this as well, was limiting parking to 50% as an example. That may well be a smart, as folks as communities think about how many day tickets or monthly passes they're going to sell, maybe there's something on the capacity side that speaks to that. But bear with us on that. We're not making any news today on beaches yet, but we do think some general guidance, even though the decision may be local, with the exception of, say, Island Beach State Park, which is the state's. We think some guidance is in order, so bear with us, and nothing new on casinos. I think, you know, we have sort of a ring of decisions to make, and out of doors decisions, to us at least, feel like they're in the early stages of decisions we can make. Indoor, compact, we're all aggregated together decisions are going to be more difficult to make. Let's go, we'll do Nikita, is that you? And then we'll come down to Dave and go back to Ian. Please.
Hi, Governor. So I just have a couple of questions about the R&R Commission.
Can you either speak up or get closer, Mahan?
Sure.
Martel?
So I have a couple of questions about the R&R Commission. Are its members going to be required to file financial disclosures, and will they be given government emails? And regardless of the answer to that last one, will communications that they send on personal lines like cell phones be subject to disclosure under OPRA?
Is that it? I have no idea. Do you have anything you want to add?
Because it's an ad hoc commission that is created by the governor, these are, the commission members are serving in their personal capacities. They're not subject to the same ethics and disclosure laws. And there's a long history of this. We can walk you through it offline, Nikita.
They're also not being compensated, as we've said before, so.
Just, they will follow any recusal policies that we have with respect to their own personal conflicts, and we've walked each one of them through any potential conflicts.
Thank you. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Governor. So on the fiscal disaster that you were talking about, you had mentioned you're vetoing bills. Which ones are you vetoing? How likely do you think we'll have layoffs? And what kinds of state programs do you think will be eliminated or cut back significantly? And then on the whole issue of schools, I know the commissioner mentioned there's a committee that's being put together or has been put together to look at metrics about reopening summer school possibly, and then obviously in the fall. And you had mentioned, Governor, you know, stay tuned, we'll give you more details. Could you talk maybe just in general terms about the kinds of stuff you're going to be looking at? Because you've got classrooms, school buses, lunchroom, especially younger kids, you know, fighting, pulling masks off each other. That's going to be rough, I would think.
On the vetoes, we'll come back to you with the specific list, but they fall into a couple of categories, Dave. One is, which I think is the biggest number, bills that had been introduced, and subsequently there have been cleanup bills that I've already signed, so that these were no longer the gating reality. We had already worked with the legislature to clean it up. Secondly, second category would be some bills where we believe the feds either are or will fund. As an example, Lamont referenced the CARES Act, that we can get the money out of the feds so that we don't need to spend our precious remaining coins. Third category would be, it's a noble notion, but we can't possibly execute on it fast enough to deal with the crisis before us. So, you know, in other words, it's a good idea, but it's going to take too long to execute to address the here and now challenge that it was intended for. And then the last category, and there are only a couple, but and I don't make light of this, we just don't have the money. So they're completely well intentioned. In a normal time, up until a few months ago, these are things that we would have clearly entertained, but we just don't have the shekels right now to do that. I can't give you any more color on eliminations, cutbacks, layoffs, but they will be large scale. I just don't. I'm not saying that with any joy. We'll have no choice. And again, I pray that both we get very good interpretation of the CARES Act, which we may get later on today. That's an important piece, that we get a big bucket of federal direct cash assistance through Congress and a bill signed by the president. And thirdly, that we get the flexibility to borrow, which we need our legislature to help us get there. That's an important, again, you don't wake up every day, particularly if you look at the 2 years, our first 2+ years in office, we were managing aggressively. In fact, we got elected in part to do that, to manage aggressively structural deficits. But we got no choice at the moment. And Lamont, I'm not sure if you want to add anything in terms of the deliberations you'll be expecting.
Yeah. So as a member of the Council of Chief State School Officers, all the commissioners throughout the country, there's a framework they put for best practices and guidelines. We'll be working off that framework and really kind of flushing it out more and make it tailored to New Jersey. Those guidelines, one is continuity of learning, which is reopening schools, including summer learning, conditions for learning, so talking about the safety, leadership and planning, and policy and funding. So those are the 4 areas, broad areas that we'll be looking at using that framework that's predicated on best practices. That's also part of the consortium of commissioners throughout the country.
Thank you. Martell, let's hit Ian here.
Governor, while a portion of our student population has adapted to schooling remotely online, are you concerned about the estimated 90,000 children in the state with no internet access at home? What will New Jersey do to keep these kids from falling behind? Commissioner Persicelli, how soon can New Jersey start asymptomatic testing for residents to get a clear picture of how the virus is spread? And why aren't all the residents and staff at Andover Subacute getting tested after it's become clear the virus was prevalent?
You've been listening to Governor Murphy give an update on the coronavirus outbreak in New Jersey. We're now going to return to regularly scheduled programming here on CBS 2. For extended local coverage, stick with our streaming service, CBSN New York.
This has been a special report from CBS 2 News.